minutes ago after the historic summit between the leaders of North and South Korea. Here's the tweet. Just had a long and very good talk with President Moon of South Korea. Things are going very well. Time and location of meeting with North Korea is being set. Also spoke to Prime Minister Abe of Japan to inform him of the ongoing negotiations.
CNN international correspondent Paula Hancock says live from Seoul, South Korea. CNN White House correspondent Abby Phillip is at the White House for us. Abby, would like to begin with you. What are you hearing from Washington regarding this conversation?
Well, the White House hasn't yet released a full readout of the conversation, but we know in the last couple of days there's been some winnowing down of the details for this potential summit between President Trump and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The number of sites that this potential meeting could potentially be held at has gone from about 5 to 2 or 3, according to President Trump, who said that in a press conference yesterday. And now this conversation seems to indicate that that process is marching on. Now, this phone call between the two leaders comes at a time when President Trump has made it very clear that he is eager to have this meeting with the North Koreans. He thinks that these talks are heading in the right direction, heading in a positive direction, but it remains to be seen. He has said that whether or not they will actually make it to the table, he has kept open the possibility that if North Korea doesn't satisfactorily give the United States something or what they want in advance of this meeting, that the United States might scrap the plans altogether or walk away once they are in the meeting. Christy and Victor.
All right, let's go to Paula now. Paula, I don't know, and you'll tell us if the South Koreans are talking about this call at all. And if you can, in that answer, give us an idea. We've been talking this morning about the optimism balanced with skepticism here in the U.S. To what degree is there skepticism there in South Korea of these new talks, this new conversation with North Korea?
Well, Victor and Christy, there definitely is skepticism because the South Koreans have been here before. Now, we are waiting at this point for the Blue House, the presidential office here, to give us details about that call. It was planned to start about 2 hours ago. We don't know whether it actually started on time, but it was expected because we know that President Moon was very honest about the fact he knew he needed Washington on board for these North-South Korean talks to be successful, saying that previous engagements and agreements and declarations haven't worked because Washington was not 100% behind it. So they have been very clear that it is highly likely as well that the South Korean President Moon Jae-in will travel to Washington soon to brief the US President Donald Trump in person about that summit that we saw between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in on Friday. So we're waiting for any kind of details. Maybe he spoke about that half hour that the two leaders, the North and South Korean leader, were speaking. They were on camera. It was being beamed live around the world, but there was no audio. There were no interpreters near there. There was nobody except for these two men. What were they talking about? Potentially talking about the next summit. President Moon has always said that the North-South Korean summit was just the guidepost, almost the stepping stone to the summit between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. So people here are optimistic, at least some are. We have had small pockets of protests in the street this Saturday. Hundreds of defectors actually gathered as well and said, don't believe what you saw on Friday. That was a show by North Korea. Do not trust them, as you would expect they would say, having escaped North Korea and knowing the brutality of that country on a first-term basis. So certainly there is skepticism here. There is also, I've been hearing from some South Koreans, some difficulty in reconciling the Kim Jong-un that they saw on their television screens on Friday and the Kim Jong-un that they know about, that they have heard about from defectors, from the United Nations, the human rights abuses, the fact that that North Korea has threatened to turn Seoul into a sea of flames. So there's also some reconciliation that needs to be done here, trying to see Kim Jong-un in a different light, because clearly what we saw from him on Friday, engaging with the South Korean president, they were embracing, they were smiling, they were laughing, shaking hands, is a very different Kim Jong-un to the one they're used to. Victor and Christy.
All righty. Hey, Paula, I want to go to Abby now here, because Abby, in this tweet from the president just a short time ago as well, he did mention that the time and location of this meeting with North Korea is being set. Is there any gauge yet as to where specifically this is going to be and how soon we may know the details of that?
Well, we could know fairly soon, Christy. It's clear that the president is eager to get this nailed down. He wants to know when it's going to happen because it's very important to him that if all things go well, that they get to this point where they can actually meet. But some of the list of countries that they'd been talking about, they pretty early on eliminated the United States as a possibility. They eliminated North Korea as a possibility, but they're looking at some other locations within Asia more broadly, perhaps Singapore, places that are geographically closer to North Korea, in part because of perhaps some logistical constraints on Kim Jong-un's part, his ability to get from North Korea to someplace much farther away. So they're looking for a somewhat neutral location where they can hold this meeting, but one that allows that is possible for Kim Jong-un to get to on the kind of aircraft equipment that he has in North Korea. But no concrete details yet, but the president seems to be hinting that maybe they're close. Maybe they're getting to a point where they're almost there. They went from 5 to 2 to 3, or 5 to 3 to 2 in the last several days, which means that this process is moving forward fairly quickly.
All right, Abby Phillip, Paula Hancock, we appreciate it so much. Thank you both. Joining us now, Bill Richardson, former U.S. ambassador to the UN and New Mexico governor. He's also been involved in several negotiations with North Korea. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us. First and foremost, your reaction to this phone call.
Well, I'm sure it was a congratulatory call. I think this summit went very well. I think it advances the potential success of President Trump's summit. But I think maybe they were talking about some daylight that has occurred between the United States and South Korea. One, if you read the declaration of the two presidents that just came out, they talk about a Korean-free, nuclear-free peninsula. One of the issues is, if that's the case, what happens to American ships and aircraft that have nuclear weapons? That affects the U.S.-South Korea relationship. And secondly, you know, there is a little bit of a difference in terms of what denuclearization means. For the South Korean president, he wants a step-by-step process. In other words, North Korea does a little denuclearization, and then they get some benefits, sanctions relief. You know, the U.S. position is very clear. We want full denuclearization and then sanctions relief, then maybe trade benefits, then maybe some kind of treaty. So, you know, there's a little daylight emerging between the two allies that has to be fixed before the summit.
So there's a lot there, Mr. Ambassador. Let's start with the daylight. President Moon ran in part and was elected in part on talking to the North and trying to rebuild that relationship, and is eager to come through on that promise. To what degree, then, should the U.S. consider any questions or concessions about the number of U.S. military resources there on the peninsula or in the region, or the frequency of these military drills?
Well, you know, we have to remember that the most vulnerable population in this entire Korean tension are the South Korean people. There's 25 million people right in the Seoul area that are susceptible, that are vulnerable to an attack by North Korea. So we have to take that very much into account. However, you know, there is a treaty relationship which says that we're going to maintain our military presence with South Korea. I think there may be some flexibility if an agreement is made on the kind of military exercises that we have with South Korea that might not threaten the North as much. Also, maybe moving some of the troops away from the DMZ, from the demilitarized zone, reducing the tension or the proximity of the troops. Maybe there's flexibility there, but you know, the treaty relationship is very firm. We have some ships, aircraft that have nuclear weapons to defend Japan, South Korea. You know, Korean free peninsula of nuclear weapons. And I know it was just the goal. I'm not trying to diminish a good summit, the importance of the summit of the two Korean leaders. But, you know, there's that daylight that is emerging that has to be fixed before the Trump summit with Kim Jong-un.
So, Ambassador, when we look at this tweet and the president's talking about the conversations he had this morning with President Moon and Prime Minister Abe, do you have a sense of how influential those two leaders are on President Trump? Is he accepting guidance and input from them? I mean, the tweet conveys there is a sense of partnership, but at the end of the day, we have a president who's been very vocal saying he will walk out of this meeting if he doesn't hear what he wants to hear.
Well, look, Abe, the Japanese have felt they've been left out of the negotiations with North Korea, with South Korea. So they want to be sure that they're in. I mean, they've got a population vulnerable to North Korean missiles. We've got 50,000 American troops, major trading partners with Japan. So we got to listen to the Japanese. And I think the good point is the president has a personal relationship with Abe. With South Korea, we also have to acknowledge that it was the South Korean president that paved the way for the betterment of relations and easing of tensions in the peninsula and the summit. So we have to take them into account. But in the end, you know, the United States, we're the ones with a military power, with a treaty relationship. And North Korea wants to deal with us. So we're the biggest players in the room. But the president has to take them into account. You know, my worry is that he gets a little impulsive. And although his tweets lately have been good, I just wish he would stop all tweets and leave the Secretary of State and his diplomats to lead the negotiations. But anyway, that's not going to happen anyway. So
let me wrap this up with a quick question and hopefully a quick answer. The U.S. has been here before watching this between the North and South with Kim Jong-il and President Roh and President Kim. Does this look like the real thing this time to you?
It does look like the real thing, but with a lot of risks. The real thing, why? Because Kim Jong-un is involved, and he's leading the negotiations, and he seems to be transforming himself from a pariah to a statesman. And then the fact that President Trump needs a big foreign policy victory because of some of the domestic problems and other reasons. So I think this is the real thing. I'm hopeful, but a lot of risks, and I just hope we're prepared. Because I know those North Koreans, they're prepared. They're going to be relentless. You know, they got something up their sleeve.
Something up their sleeve. Ambassador Bill Richardson.